And thanks for joining us here on PM Express. It's a Wednesday, and so it is another edition of Manifesto Tracker. And my guest with me in the studio, we're going to be co-presenting this evening's show. That's what we do on Wednesdays. What we do on Manifesto Tracker is simple. We're taking some of the key areas within the manifesto on a sector-by-sector basis and breaking it down. One, so you can be informed. Two, so you can, again, decide which party, if that sector is what will be fundamentally influencing your vote. You can now come to a decision whether the NDC or the MPP are in the position to best deliver on that. And tonight, we're focusing on education, the big education debate. You see him in the studio. He heads the Africa Education Watch. Kofi Asari, he was my guest on this particular show last 4 years when we did Manifesto Tracker, and I'm happy that he's joining me again. He will co-present this with me. He's doing presentations across the world, by the way, on education. But today, I'm going to be asking him a few questions. He can also bounce it back off me, but we're going to be talking about this and then helping you navigate which party is closer to delivering on the big ticket items, how realistic they are, but which problems are they solving really? But also, most importantly, what are the outcomes, considering all the proposals they're making to fix problems that they put in there. So Kofi, thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. I'm happy that you're joining us again. And Kofi had done some work on this, and so he sent us to us to look at it. And so we're going to go to that. And we're starting with early childhood education. But I need to ask why that was, in terms of your order of things, why that was so important to put it first.
Well, early childhood is important because it is a foundation of education, be it tertiary, secondary, or basic. Without early childhood, without a child going through nursery, kindergarten, they cannot enter class 1 and progress to the university. And so early childhood is a base, a foundation, and it's very, very important, especially in a country where we have issues of, deficits in net enrollment at the KG level.
And that's the point you're making. So what Kofi had done, and it's here on your smart wall here, is that every sector he chooses, he picks on, he will lay out what the problems are. Because if you're proposing solutions, you must propose solutions to problems. So you cannot conjure your own problems and then prescribe solutions to them because you believe it will win vote. It must address particular needs. And so that's what Kofi had done. Kofi, and you say that one of the key problems that any manifesto must address, if it is to be responsive and effective, it must attempt to fix the 10% of KG-aged children not in school.
Exactly, because we are working within the constitutional provision 38.2, which says that every child of school-going age must enroll and complete the full course of basic education. And without having full enrollment, net enrollment of 100% at the KG level, we cannot achieve F-cube. So that is critical to ensuring that we achieve the objective of the constitutional mandate of free compulsory universal basic education.
Okay, then you say inadequate TLRS. What's that?
Well, so at the KG level, apart from 10% of KG-8 children not being in school, we have the issue of inadequate teaching and learning resources. I'm talking about what makes up the school environment or the classroom environment. Decent classrooms, we are talking about textbooks, learning aids, teaching aids, and all that. All the kids required to teach using play-based pedagogy, which the government has committed to deploy, fall within the category of inadequate TLRs.
Okay, and of course, the problem with teachers we know, and then we have pedagogy and the infrastructure. This is a big one, and I see that it sort of runs through almost every part of the education sector. We'll come to some of the specifics, but so now that you know what the problems are, what are the proposals from both parties to fix it? The MPP says compulsory early years and primary education for all, and this today, actually, or yesterday, the Education Minister has been reiterating this. They're going to go to Parliament with some legislation that will make the early childhood education compulsory, right? But this is already in the Constitution.
The MPP makes an audacious move to operationalize the compulsory aspect of F-cube in 38.2 of the Constitution. What I see that they seek to do is that they want to have a legislation and policy that ensures that every child of early childhood going age enrolls in early childhood and, for that matter, transitions to basic.
How do you enforce that?
That is an aspect of the Constitution that we have not activated after 19 years of implementing F-cube. And enforcing that means putting legal obligations on parents to enroll where there is an early childhood institution within reasonable distance. Okay, but the challenge is that to let that happen, there must be adequate early childhood institutions. There must be adequate nurseries, kindergartens, so that parents can enroll their children in them.
As it is now, they are free?
Free. Yes, KG education is free. It's part of basic education. Okay. But if you say early years, early childhood, it actually comes down sometimes to nursery. An aspect of our nursery education is privatized. Okay? A heavy aspect is about 90% is privatized. But at the KG level, it's part of basic education, so it's free. So the key challenge here is ensuring that underserved communities have access to kindergartens. Okay? And also, all primary schools have access to kindergarten. Not all primary schools have kindergarten. About 300 primary schools do not have kindergartens. Okay. And there are many underserved communities that do not have kindergartens at all and primary schools at all. So to operationalize this, you need to expand infrastructure vigorously at the early childhood level, at the primary level. And that is what I see that they want. And
you see that the NDC is trying to respond to that infrastructure challenge. They were there slightly different. Early childhood education, supported by appropriate infrastructure. So you're already building the infrastructure component into the plan. It is a professional development program for early childhood educators, use local language and digital content. And then the MPP wants to give incentives, so we get more teachers there. In terms of the two approaches, what's your comment now? You're comparing and contrasting both.
The NDC focuses more on all infrastructure, because obviously without infrastructure, there cannot be equitable access. Okay? So they focus more on infrastructure and then also professional development of early childhood teachers, giving them training in play-based pedagogy and also making them available. Because if you don't deploy teachers, the highest teacher deficit in this country is at the early childhood level. In districts like Central Gunja, there are about 80% deficits in the KG alone. And so they want to focus more on the professional development, deploy more teachers, and then also focus more on infrastructure. All the two proposals are situate within the core issues in the early childhood. None of the two will solve holistically the challenges, but all of them situate within the key challenges in early childhood care and education.
Okay, that's a very important point there. It's so focused on early childhood. MPP says they renovate KGs and primary schools, and some of them are in shambles. We traveled around the country. The big problem you see there is the quality of infrastructure is terrible. They want to do that. They want to do that and do conducive, accessible, and inclusive. Some of the schools are still on the trees, and that is so heartbreaking. The NDC says they will initiate a national educare program to establish these early child learning facilities in workspaces to support. And I'm asking myself when I saw this, would it be in public workspaces, public institutions, or in private?
One of the challenges in assessing early childhood is that mostly the schools are located outside town, outside the central business districts. And so it's difficult for parents who are working in Accra, for instance, to drop off their kids and go to work and then close and pick them up, because you don't find early childhood care centers in Accra or in the areas where employment is dense. So this approach is providing early childhood centers in the business districts, so that parents, not only parents, I did some study in Agbogbloshie, where market women there were struggling to find a school to take their children. If you go to Agbogbloshie, the Agbogbloshie area, there are 10 schools in the slum. The 10 schools are all private schools. We call them low-cost private schools. So parents take their children to this early childhood school. They pay 5 cedis a day, And these are makeshift schools. They are not schools. Some of them take place in cinemas. Some of them take place in churches and all that. So this idea is that bring the early childhood centers close to work, so that parents can drop off their kids when they close from work. They pick them up. So that's one other approach. If you look at the MPP approach and NDC approach, both are geared towards expanding equitable access to early childhood, and then they all prioritize pedagogy. MPP promised pedagogy. We are seeing NDC also promising reviewing curriculum and then strengthening play-based pedagogy. So both parties appreciate the challenges in the early childhood space.
Okay.
What we are not seeing in both parties' approach is the rural-urban dynamic. Okay. It's very, very important.
So that hasn't been clearly specified. They haven't stratified the solutions.
Exactly.
So this is a one-size-fits-all, because you don't really see it there.
Which is the major problem in our educational system. Okay. Because we have an unbalanced education system where education is growing in quality and quantity in urban and peri-urban, and then you're almost the opposite, in the deprived areas. So we are conscious about policies and how they're implemented to the extent that they solve the rural-urban divide.
Okay, so I guess if you have to be biased towards the rural areas because into the urban areas will have a bit more infrastructure.
That's the only way to deploy affirmative action to ensure that there's equity.
And I remember last 4 years when we did this, it was one of the key things you kept emphasizing throughout our conversation, that the manifestos failed to do that.
Yeah.
Is equitable distribution of the limited resources we have in education across the country, giving affirmative action, approach to the rural areas that are already very deprived and sharing it equitably, not evenly, but equitably.
Not equally.
Not equally, yeah. But yeah. But we see that 4 years on, the manifesto are not still responding to that. Or do we know the problem exists?
The indicators are widening. I mentioned.
Yeah. The gap has actually widened, as you know.
Many of them are widening. As I mentioned, in Central Gonja, which has the highest teacher deficit at the early childhood level. In KGs alone, about 84% of teachers there are not available. You understand? In KGs. So, but the national average, perhaps, is about 12 or 11%. So you see the disparity between
huge disparity.
The deficit at the national level and the deficit in the deprived district like Central Gonja.
Yeah.
And that is the context within which I want to see these policies being implemented.
And let's move on now to the basic education level. And you highlight that we have a 30% dropout rate. That's scary. And what's accounting for this?
Well, a myriad of factors. Only 7 out of 10 who enroll in kindergarten 1 complete junior high school 3. In the northern part of Ghana, only 5 out of 10.
Wow.
Well, this is the national average.
50%.
Yeah.
So when they fall off, where do they go?
That's why we have a high number of out-of-school children. It comprises dropouts and then people who have never been to school before.
Wow.
And a lot of them are a subject of rural-urban migration.
Okay.
So these are economic and socio-cultural factors that militate against, smooth transition from kindergarten 1.
And we'll come to the MPP one, because I remember this very last few weeks, we've heard the MPP say they're going to, in fact, these 2 days, say they're going to, in part of the policy, I was reading that today, the education minister was saying it, when the law goes, the basic education will be part of this SHS. They're going to merge it. So basic education will be part of senior high school. I think they said it.
So that is more of secondary education being part of basic.
Secondary education being part of basic.
So that the minimum education in the Ghanaian would assess should be secondary.
So that the free SHS will start from here.
Well, there's free basic. But what will happen is that there won't be any BEC
break
determining whether someone will go to secondary or not.
Okay,
At the moment, if you have 9 in maths or English, you can't go to secondary.
Okay.
So take it that the difference is that there won't be any BEC sieve.
Okay.
So everyone will migrate from junior high school 3
straight
senior high school 1 seamlessly, except that there will still be some examination that will be used to do placement. Determine who goes to Prosec and who goes to another school.
That's a very important point. I guess the question then to ask is, those who are falling off, are they falling off because of the qualification exams, or they're falling off because of cost?
This dropout rate. The first reason is the distance to school. Okay. Now, averagely, by convention, primary schools are supposed to be located within 3 kilometers, within 3 kilometers distance, and then junior high schools within 5 kilometers distance. But in some part of the country, so the geographical north, the western north, you have sparsely located communities and few schools. And so children are commuting 10, 12 kilometers a day to school. The distance to school is the major source of dropout.
Because they have to do transportation.
Yeah, because many communities are underserved.
Yeah.
So in the absence of schools in their communities, they have to commute to the nearest community with their primary school. Now, what worsens the situation is that between primary 6 and junior high school 1, we have 15,000 primary schools and 11,000 junior high schools.
Okay.
So 4,000 primary schools do not have junior high schools. So children from many of these 4,000 primary schools, when they graduate from primary 6, depending on the distance to the next junior high school, they may fall within this dropout category.
Okay, that's a very important point. So you have to solve that problem. And then you talk about the fact that you have 1 million out-of-school children right now. That's one that needs to be fixed. We'll see whether the solutions you prescribe solves it. Inadequate teacher learning resource. Furniture, we know, is a problem. Infrastructure, again, is coming up strongly. only 50% of public big schools have ICT facilities. That's a big problem, in today's age of AI.
Computing is a subject, a compulsory subject.
But yet you don't have,
exactly.
Yeah, that's 1 million decks. And this is the thing that beats me. It doesn't cost much to organize, because there are a lot of carpenters and wooden shops in this country that can help you fix this problem. $1 million doesn't sound too much to get desks in schools, and here's a problem. The lower level of learning accountability is also part of the problem. The NDC talks about, just again, part of the initiative to this special allowance of 20% business school for teachers, just encourage them to go. Then you have the NPP doing something pretty similar, prioritizing study leave for pay for rural teachers, just incentivizing them to go to rural areas. I guess this is part of solving the problem you're making.
Yes, because
the rural-urban divide.
Because dropouts occur, among others, when teachers are not available. Okay. The child gets to school, the classroom is unmanned by a teacher, they are not encouraged to drop out. And so one of the ways in preventing dropouts or strengthening retention in school is to ensure that there is a teacher. So these two promises by the NDC and NPP aimed at ensuring that rural teachers are motivated is in the right direction.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they talk about this Furniture for All initiative. It sounds simple enough, but they want to leverage on the private sector working with carpenters to sort of provide the chairs across the country. If it's this simple, it should have been done already.
The NDC focuses more on infrastructure. Yeah. And you see that they are, through this, I see them looking at innovative approaches in developing furniture. We have recommended, for about 3 or 4 years now, that we can't approach the infrastructure issue with the normal procurement approach, because the deficit is huge. And so let's look at innovative ways of mobilizing local resources at the community and giving cash to support communities to produce infrastructure. In communities where there is timber, for instance, they can liaise with the Forestry Commission and District Assembly, get some timber, give them some cash, then they produce their own furniture. In that case, they won't be spending 600 cedis, if you like, on one dual desk. They might spend only 200 cedis because they are using local resources and harnessing timber resources, etc., instead of going to buy everything, at the market rate. So I want to see such approaches being adopted by this Furniture for All.
And I guess the question when they sit to our conversation, because we'll be joined by Dr. Clement Park and the former head of the GS, is give us the details. What is it that you plan to do here? And upgrade the JHS with good classrooms, workshop, same thing, right? Good classrooms, exactly. We have to fix the furniture problem.
Exactly. So this is an admission that there's an issue with infrastructure, or we call it soft infrastructure, that's furniture, in the junior high schools. And this also, let's go back, the junior high school issue also is an admission that there's an issue with science laboratories. As we mentioned earlier, only 15% of junior high schools have have ICT laboratories. Yeah. And so ensuring that these laboratories and ICT facilities exist is the only way we can have the curriculum which has computing and other subjects as compulsory subjects being taught, the students acquiring the necessary competencies.
I see the MPP trying to be more comprehensive in addressing the problem. They're just not looking at furniture. They're looking at the entire classroom situation. I went to Saito, so I know this. It's not just about furniture. The classroom was just not good to sit in. The roof was leaking. That affects quality of learning, definitely. You have the workshops, that wasn't even if it was, you didn't have the tools to work in there. They have the laboratories. So that sort of have a nice bouquet addressing all the key issues.
Yes, the MPP touches on laboratories, workshops, classrooms, ICT facilities. But at the basic level, there is almost no difference between the MPP manifesto and NPP, except that the MPP manifesto comprises 30% of basic education promises. The NDC comprises 27% of basic education promises. The top three, one is basic for all the parties, but 30% of the manifestos of the MPP was from basic, and then 27% was from the NDC.
Okay, and let's quickly look at a lot of them infrastructure. NDC is very infrastructure focused, right? And the question to ask the NDC when we sit down is, infrastructure costs money. Considering where the economy is going to be next year with the fiscal constraint that you have and no fiscal space, where are you going to get the money to do all these infrastructure interventions? Key question, establish the school infrastructure too. MPP is the same.
Yes, both have different approaches towards infrastructure development. MPP is saying that when they come into office, they will harmonize the various infrastructural databases in the country. Harmonize it. Get Fund is building school infrastructure. District assemblies are building school infrastructure. development authorities are building infrastructure. They're going to harmonize the database, and then they're going to establish what they call, they're going to establish a department, CIMAT, a department at the Ministry of Education that will be responsible for planning and implementing infrastructure from tertiary, from early childhood to tertiary. That's their approach towards infrastructure. NDC is saying that when they come into power, they will uncap GET Fund, free more resources, and then they will start by removing all the schools under trees, and then building schools in underserved communities. So these are the various promises they make in respect of...
Which one? I mean, you are in the sector. Which one best addresses the problem at the very fundamental level?
I think the fundamental issue about infrastructure is resource constraint. And we have mentioned time with that number, that any robust, any audacious attempt to revamp infrastructure, upgrade infrastructure in the education space cannot succeed without uncapping GET Fund. Uncapping GET Fund will free about 25 billion cedis more in the next 4 years for GET Fund. In the next 4 years, we are going to get about 50 billion accruing to the GET Fund levy. But if it remains capped, just about 25 billion will be available for actual implementation by GET Fund.
By that,
if it's uncapped, 50 billion will be available. And so I see the focus on uncapping GET Fund and free more resources for infrastructure development to be a much more realistic way to impact on infrastructure.
Especially when the infrastructure problem is a
financial issue.
Financial issue. Okay, we'll put that to both sides, and because I want to go to the SHS because that's key for a lot of people. WASI, more practice is a key issue. Free SHS double track is a very thorny one for people, although it is a brilliant policy intervention. School feeding, school placement, big problem, curriculum and teaching resources. Now, first, if you look at this very controversial part, the NDC says they will extend free SHS to cover students in private senior high schools. And we know the debate. If you listen to the adverts, there is an MPP advert of Mahama's voice saying, in essence, that you do not rush into introducing free SHS, almost suggesting that something has to be abolished, right? And then the NDC has reacted by showing how Mahama actually supports it and says he will enhance it, they said disregard it. So there's a lot of politics around free SHS. And we are now, when the NDC said they will review, they're telling us what they're going to do to review, which is extend, right? But they also said they will cover private schools and I think boarding houses. It was in the 2020 manifesto.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. But the question I ask you is, if you're expanding, free SHS funding is around averaging 2 billion.
Averagely 2.5 billion.
2.5 billion.
Yeah.
If you expand, can this economy where we are now going 2025, 2028, can we contain it? Do we have the resources?
Well, both parties are promising to continue a free senior high school.
Yes.
That is great.
It's good. Yeah, it's
policy continuity.
Yeah.
I think that the decision to extend free senior high schools to private schools by the NDC's decision, it's not. It doesn't reflect the exigencies of the time. It is not a priority. Let me explain why. With the current 1.4 million children in school, we are struggling with double track. So if the NDC is promising to end double track, which is partly an infrastructural problem, you don't add to the numbers. You first focus on managing the numbers, expand infrastructure, phase out double track. And then after you are running single track, then you are not done. You are not coming to private schools yet. There's a free senior high school bill coming on, which is making secondary education compulsory, which means that everybody, all the 600,000 graduates from junior high school 3 will now move to senior high school 1. Currently, it's about 500,000. It's about 490, 500,000. Now, all of them are going. It means that you're going to add to the numbers, okay? And so you have more numbers to manage because of the seamless transition that's going to happen. So you don't have the space to think of adding private schools to this. That's why I think that within the context of these two issues, it is not a priority.
Especially when you also add to that, you're promising to abolish double track.
Exactly.
But that then further complicates the problem.
This promise is going to be hindered by biting or chewing too much, bringing private sector on board. Maybe when the NDC was making this promise, and I will agree with them within that context, there wasn't a free senior high school law or bill which was proposing that there's going to be a seamless transition. All Form 3 students in junior high school will go to Form 1. But now the bill will be in Parliament, and the NDC has expressed its readiness to support the government to pass the law, to pass it into law, which means that should the NDC win or the MP win, we are going to implement that policy. So should the NDC win, it will be faced with creating space in the secondary education sector for about 80,000 more students.
Yeah.
Okay? Within a double track system that you are promising to abolish. Now, while you struggle with that, I don't think it's a priority for you to add private schools.
A question. If you add private schools, you have additional infrastructure available. Because private schools have infrastructure too.
Okay.
So all the people who would have gone to the basic schools, the public SHS, some of them will now go to private because it's free there too.
Don't forget.
Doesn't that ease the infrastructure
I agree
problem?
with you. Don't forget, I said that double track is partly an infrastructure problem. It doesn't mean it's an infrastructure problem. I don't subscribe to the school of thought that double track is 100% an infrastructure problem. There is an issue of distribution. Because there are schools that are underserved with students, and there are schools that are overserved with students.
So if you distribute properly,
there must be there's a demand and supply issue, and then there's an infrastructure issue. But anytime we have a discussion around free senior high school, whether it's infrastructural or whether it's food, note that at the base is financial. The economics of the situation, if you are adding private senior high schools, it is true that they have infrastructure. Yeah. But you are adding more money, right?
That's true.
Exactly.
That's very basic. Exactly. I mean, I don't want to. In fact, the high school, secondary school debate always is around free SHS. Yeah. Always is around.
And
that.
It's cash, right?
It's cash. It's cash. So. But a quick comment on this textbooks problem. We introduced a new curriculum, right, for the secondary level, and for 4 or 5 years, we still haven't provided the complete complement of textbooks. But we phased it out now with the new curriculum coming. Give me your comment on that. Okay, so for the secondary level, let me is promising to provide textbooks with digital infrastructure. These are all important. There's a new senior high school curriculum being rolled out. We are in month 1. It is now being rolled out. Okay, and this new curriculum has been carefully designed to prepare our students for the 21st century. Okay, and so certain key teaching and learning resources are required to ensure that teaching and learning in that curriculum, to the extent that creative skills, are all important. We need these facilities. MPP focuses a lot of its promises in the secondary education sector and basic on implementing the standard-based curriculum and then the senior high school curriculum. So these are important ingredients in implementing the new senior high school curriculum. And so it's very, very important. Yeah, but it's also about credibility on the subject. They struggled to provide the textbook for the previous, the one that was faced. They struggled at the basic school level, not at the secondary school level. Yeah. Secondary schools haven't had textbook issues. Okay, but now this if you look at the general and education sector, yes, I mean, raise questions about this will have to be provided. If in basic you couldn't do it, what's the guarantee you can do it in the secondary level? I think that this promise is is achievable, and it is honest in the sense that these textbooks are digital textbooks. The tablets are already being deployed. It's a process ongoing. And so far as I'm concerned, the workbooks, the teaching and learning guides have already been developed and have been distributed in the senior high schools as we speak. Okay, TTEL, NACA, Ministry of Education working together. And we are part of this process, monitoring it. So it is work in progress. So I believe that this can be done. Okay. But apart from whether it can be done or not, it is important that it is done. And you see the same thing in progress. Expand digital libraries. Providing digital libraries. Enhance access to global teaching. Because those are key in implementing. And if they win, they will meet the new curriculum. The new curriculum that is now being rolled out. Yes. And they will have to implement that. They can't roll it back. I mean, they can if they want to. No, they are not. The NDC is not promising to roll the curriculum back. They are promising to review the basic education curriculum, which is all right, which is great because the curriculum is designed to be reviewed every 5 years. And we are in year 5 or year 6 since the basic education curriculum started in 2000 or so. You are in year 5. We are in year 5, 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, year 5. So
the next government will definitely have to review the basic education curriculum in line with the curriculum's framework.
Okay.
So it is not about rolling it back, but then reviewing it to add value. But that is basic education. Yeah. Secondary education, they are not promising to review the curriculum.
Yeah, and I want to quickly go to the TVET focus very briefly. We're just going to summarize it here. Low TVET to secondary ratio, that needs to improve. Inadequate TVET training facilities and resources. We know that it sort of runs through declining TVET financing from 4% in 2020 to 1.9%. So you need to fix that, increase TVET. TVET is important. What are two parties saying? Very similar. Implement free TVET, implement national apprenticeship program, same. But if you train, you must give them the practical skills, what they accelerate development of district TVET, establish regional TVET, sort of decentralizing concepts I'm seeing here. If you want to accelerate development, district TVET, regional TVET, sort of similar. Establish open university, facilitate establishment of the market spaces. Both parties are quite thinking alike in what they're trying to do.
Yes, they have similar approaches, but the NDC prioritizes, in terms of the prominence, NDC commits 20% of their manifesto space in education for TVET.
TVET, okay.
Okay, and that is their second highest after basic education, which is 27.
Okay.
And if you look at the NDC's approach, they emphasize more on business growth models. Okay, development and implementation of business growth models at the training level, at the school level, and then also they focus more on entrepreneurship, and startup support. So it's a value chain from the training to the incubation and then startup level.
Okay.
That is how they presented this. The MPP's one focuses mainly on free TVET and then continuing the ongoing establishment or retooling of TVET centers or Center of Excellence. And then also the innovation in MPP's one is the Open University for TVET.
Okay.
Where we're going to have people accessing TVET virtually. And I'm sure we're going to see digital infrastructure being deployed for practical work and all that. A similar digital facilities are proposed by the NDC, among others, including the makerspace. The makerspace here is like having TVET, 3J, digital TVET laboratories in schools that are not even TVET, so that you're able to work from there. So they have similar approaches, except that the NDC one goes beyond the training
further
to the.
I'm going to pause here. There is a tertiary bit. I'll pull that to my guests when they sit for a conversation. But yeah, thank you very much, Kofi. I know you'll be monitoring. I'm going to put this to Professor Opoku-Amankwah, who is joining us, and then we'll also have Clement Park to answer the questions. A lot of them you've raised. I'm going to put to them. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us here on PM Express. My guest joining me for a conversation on the back of the analysis that we've just done with Kofi Asare. We'll put a few of those questions to them to get some answers so we can at least understand the thinking behind it, the costing, but also the outcomes. Syntax Times brings you PM Express. It is strong, it is tough. Academic Times, Pepsodent also. Academic Times is a Academic Times paper. It's an incoming graphic and online publication aiming to collaborate with university authorities and students to ensure that student research is published in some reform. Syntax Times, you know already, Ghana, get ready for the biggest giveaway from Syntax Times. Syntax Times is visiting 15 communities, giving them free water, and this is to say thank you, Ghana, for making us #1. Now, if you are a community and you want to benefit from Syntax free water giveaway, just log on to their social media handles at Syntax Ghana and nominate your community. Syntax Tanks, are you strong, are you tough? And I recommend Pepsodent Cavity Fighter toothpaste for you. Every time we eat food, they get stuck in our teeth. That's why you need to use that tonight before you sleep. And thank you again for staying with us. My guest joining me for a conversation is the former GS director, Professor Opoku-Amankwah. It's been a while since I saw him. I'm happy that he's here with me in the studio. He's with the NDC's MPP's Manifesto committee when it comes to education. And so I'm happy that he can join us. He really understands that field. Dr. Clement Park is with me in the studio too. You know him. He is a deputy ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. I want to launch straight in. I want to start with the biggest education subject for 3 consecutive elections, I believe. It's free SHS. And Clement Parker, let me start with you, because your policy, you stated that you want to abolish the double-track system. Now, in 2016, just before the free SHS started, enrollment was 800,000. Right now, you're talking about 1.6 million people. That is a 100% jump. If you abolish double track, how are you accommodating the significant increase in numbers that you still need to house to ensure that free SHS runs, since you're keeping the policy?
Well, Evans, let me say good evening to you and to our viewers. Yeah. I have to say good evening to Prof.
Yeah, good evening.
I was a bit uncomfortable when I became aware that he was going to be on the program.
He wanted to intimidate you?
No, not that. Just that he's a very personable person. And
so you're not able to fire.
It makes me a lot more.
It tames you.
You know, he's a nice guy, so to speak. In any case, I think you've asked a very important question. Indeed, Ghanaians have now come to know the truth that the NDC and our flag bearer at no time was ever opposed to the implementation of the free senior school policy. As you know, we have actually argued, rightly so, that we started implementing the policy, although our version was described as progressive. Be as it may, the program has come to stay, and we believe that it is a good policy. The challenges are the issues that we have always pointed out, and I don't think that anyone would disagree that it has been troubled by some challenges which are yet to be resolved after almost about 8 years of implementation. Now, one of them happens to be the introduction of the double-track system, which ostensibly had to come into being because of the increased number of students who were getting enrolled. At the same time, the current government had not done well in terms of investing sufficiently to expand both academic and residential infrastructure. So whilst it is the case that a number of schools that used to run the double track no longer do, it is still the case that it does exist. And we have proposed a way of addressing it by abolishing it. We have said that one of the ways that we are going to do this is to ensure that we decap Get Fund. When we decap Get Fund will be able to get its maximum inflows. That then allows Get Fund to have the room to complete existing Get Fund projects which have stalled because of
what comes
that
first?
burden.
What comes first? On capping Get Fund, getting the resources to increase infrastructure before you abolish, or abolishing before finding the funding from uncapping?
Obviously, you are not going to abolish it without making preparation to deal with the fallout.
Okay, so let's clarify. Because in the order in which you have positioned this in your manifesto, you say, quote, abolish double track first, restore a stable academic calendar second, embark on an emergency infrastructure drive to complete abandoned E-blocks third, expand infrastructure in existing SHS and TBED institutions fourth.
Oh, you are getting it wrong.
I'm asking a question to clarify.
It is not itemized according to priority.
I know, but that's the order.
But I'm giving you...
Order is important, and you know what I'm saying.
The background.
So that's why this show is important.
What I've just narrated
clarify
is one
on the
example.
one when you come into power, if you win, what happened first?
What one day...
I know, but the order is important. Do you phase it out, or you abolish before you seek the funding to improve infrastructure? That's an important clarity. What is the approach? Clarify.
We believe that we can abolish it and make available the infrastructure.
I put it to you.
We have said that we are going to bring on board
so you abolish
the private schools to participate. We have said we are going to complete the abandoned E-blocks.
Yes.
We have also told...
But all those would take at least minimum a year. If you're applying magic, you can do the infrastructure in a year.
But you see,
but it's not possible.
there is also the issue of uneven distribution of students.
Okay.
There are some schools And I can give you an example from my own constituency. The Fumbisi Senior High Agric School has good space. But, you know, because it is classified as a grade B, some will say C school, it does not attract the numbers that it will really require. So there are schools that have sufficient space. And if we can do a rearrangement and a redistribution of the students, and this will mean
if
that...
you can, or you will.
Well, I am giving you...
Because that's what you're saying is not in your manifesto.
But you are asking a question how we are going to do it.
Yes.
And I'm telling you how we are going to achieve that. But you see, the point I'm trying to make is that it is not going to be only one avenue towards solving this problem. There are multiple avenues that we can adapt. So what I'm seeking to do is to tell you and the Ghanaian people all the mosaic of avenues that we are going to deploy.
But you abolish it first.
Addressing this.
But you will definitely abolish first before you improve infrastructure.
We can do it coterminously.
How?
Why shouldn't that be?
Because infrastructure...
As we are working on completing abandoned e-blocks,
you abolish.
as we are adding new infrastructure...
But Dr. Park, infrastructure provision takes time.
I know that.
But immediately, enrollment happens instantaneously.
And I'm also telling you that there are schools that
do you admit,
do not have sufficient students.
So that's what I'm saying. So do you admit that emphasis on abolition, when you haven't figured out infrastructural challenges, it's not a prudent approach?
It is a prudent approach.
Where will you house the students when you abolish?
I just told you that there are schools where there are spaces.
And the redistribution will accommodate all the excess students that Free SHS has enabled. Because,
in fact, even within the current context, the number of schools that were practicing double track have been reduced.
So you will redistribute and then abolish, or you abolish and redistribute, or you do the same, you do the twice.
I said it is coterminous. We can do both.
Prof, you say you will leverage improved infrastructure towards phasing out the double track. So yours is to phase out. When you first introduced double track, thank goodness you were there.
Yeah.
So I can ask you this. Did you anticipate that it was going to last 8 years and still no end in sight? At least that was not the communication at the start of the Free SHS policy.
Yeah. Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. It's been a long while, and thank you for having me. When we started the double track in 2018. So, and at that time, the promise was that we're going to phase it out within 5 to 7 years. That was a promise that was given. And if indeed we are keeping to the 2018, then we are not up to the 5 to 7 years.
So the 7 years is this year?
It's not this year, 2018.
So you're counting it into next year?
Probably. But it's not
so it ends with this academic year that just began? Because it's 2024, 2025.
It's not just about 7 years, so just end it. I think what we need to do is to look at the thinking behind the double track. At the time that we started the double track, 2017, probably people did not believe that the Free SHS will start. So come 2018, the numbers jumped up, and we had about 181,993 students.
More than the previous year?
More than the previous, who qualified to go into the schools. And if you listen to Kofi, as he indicated, here we go to the schools based on choice. So there may be spaces, but people may not want to go into those schools. And there are
so on that score, you agree with Doc?
Oh, it's a fact. So there are some schools that are overly prescribed. There are others that are under-prescribed. And so the double track was not for all the schools, but it was for these schools that were overly prescribed. And the whole idea was that we don't want these children to be sitting home. We had about 181,000 at that time, and it's jumped up now about 200,000 annually, who without double track would not have gone to school. You know, what we did then was to come up with this double track all year round, make sure that we make full use of the facilities available, but make sure that quality is not compromised. What did we do? We employed more teachers. We also ensured that the students, in fact, as part of the whole architecture policy implementation, things like teaching and learning materials were provided.
With respect, I mean, that history has been well told. We're now looking at your manifesto. Your manifesto is forward-looking.
Yeah.
So my question to you on that, you're saying forward-looking, want to leverage on improved infrastructure. That's based on an assumption that you have improved infrastructure.
Yes.
Where's the evidence?
The evidence, I don't know whether GET Fund has been here.
But that's a GET Fund you've capped.
The GET Fund that has been capped has produced more than uncapped. If you go in there and you look at what they did was that they securitized their system, and then they borrowed ahead of them and were able to build more infrastructure. Beyond that, it is not only GET Fund that provides infrastructure under the Ministry of Education. There are other, Badia, Kuwait, etc. There are a lot of other programs that are providing infrastructure. So the double track, as we're saying, as we speak now, actually, it's not a double track that we started. It is, we are now using the transitional calendar. And under the transitional calendar, you know, in the past, we will have green, gold, green at home, gold going to school. These days, we don't have that. But what we have now is that for the 3 cohorts of students, Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, now you will get maybe Form 1 and Form 2 in school, and then Form 3 at home, and then Form 1 comes home, Form 3 joins them in that order. Now, what it means, what the NDC is proposing to do, what it means is that just a simple analysis and then we'll go on. For example, if you have a school that has space for, let's say, 4,000 students. Now, if you share among the 3 cohorts, one of them may take 1,005, another may take 1,005, another may take 1,000. Now, for what we are doing now, that 4,000 space is able to take 6,000 students. Because if you have 2 cohorts in there, 2,000, 2,000, another 2,000 of a 3rd cohort, and then they come in, and then, no. So meanwhile, what you do is that it's not so much about the long period that you go and spend in the school, but it's about the contact hours.
Yeah, but parents don't like that. All the research I've seen about free SHS says, fantastic policy. You ask parents, what do you want to change? They all say double track. So whereas you sell it, the parents aren't buying double track.
Even studies from where says parents don't like that.
Double track?
Double track.
No.
Double track.
By the way, anecdotally,
double track
I'm a beneficiary of free
opportunity.
SHS because 2 of my brothers went through it. Double track is an issue for my mom.
Double track, you get a school, you say you don't like that.
Yeah, but you are emphasizing that you want to face it out. You acknowledge is that it's a problem.
No, but it's a temporary arrangement everywhere that it's been introduced. You know, but you don't rush to face it out because parents don't like that.
You think NDC is rushing? He said they'll redistribute, and if they redistribute, they should go to abolish.
The redistribution that we're talking about, as I indicated, people go in there by choice. So there are a lot of other spaces that a lot of time people don't want to go. And over the years, what we've done is that we've come in with different ways of getting people to. Now, one of the things that we did was that every person should choose one day school. The year before I left, there were about 160 schools that we said you could choose that boarding as your day school, as your one-day school. I think you get the idea. So that you get a lot more people to go in, because those schools are maybe undersubscribed. But if you can choose that as your boarding, what it also means is that you can come from the north or the south to that school. You don't need to have it within your enclave.
Will the redistribution help create more space and reduce the burden on infrastructure?
It did, you know. But
so if it did, why didn't you abolish it like the NDC is proposing?
No, you can't abolish it. What I'm saying is that people go to school by choice. And there are some specific schools and...
Are you saying that without taking away the choice element in the placement, you cannot redistribute enough to fix the infrastructure space problem?
This year, for example, the choice element has been toned down, but you still have people who still want to change, to go to their first choice, their second choice, their third choice.
It's all about quality.
You know?
Okay.
So what the long-term idea behind the whole of this is that, you know, President Kufuor started this model school idea, and we want to still relook at it. If we have schools across various districts that are comparable to those that have the first choice and the second choices, they have all the things that people will want to now travel to other places to go and enjoy. We will gradually be able to do that.
Okay, so now tell me, when you were planning this, and this is very brief so I can come back to Dr. Park, when you say phase it out, when are you hoping to phase it out? What is your end date?
There's no end date.
But you must have one. You can't say phase it out in perpetuity. You must, first of all, when you were starting, you told us your anticipated end date. Why don't you have it
There's
now?
no end date here. This one is a proposal. When you come to the actual planning, and then you work out with the numbers.
So you haven't worked out the numbers yet?
You can't work out the numbers now. You have to propose.
The man you were the GS boss, you've implemented it for 8 years.
Listen.
You must have enough data to simulate and model it to know when you can realistically face it out.
You look at various models, and then you look at...
So what model?
Now, every year... No,
I know, because of time. I'm just asking, do you have an end date?
Can I explain?
Because of time, I want to hear him.
No, but you see...
You don't have an end date, it's fine.
Evans, the challenge that we have is this kind of... we put end date, and then we got there and say, you said you do this. No. As you go on, the issues come up. You find a way of resolving.
Remember, the manifesto, people have to make decisions on December 7 based on that. And they need enough information to be informed.
Evans, we are looking at projections. We are looking into the proposal. We are looking into the future. MPP, at no point in their manifesto in 2016, talked about Agenda 111. But a situation came where they needed to have Agenda 111. You know, do we say that we restrict them to their
let me come back to
just for the record.
Yes, please.
The current president, Akufo-Addo, he said in 2020 that double track would end before 2024. That is the president. So yes, they gave a timeline, and they failed to meet it. So, Prof, a timeline was given by the president.
Dr. Park,
I just want to put that on record.
So, for example, if the president says we will end it 2024, by 2024, you still have, the numbers. You go and end it because you have said it. And then let the children stay home.
This is what he said.
So,
this is
that how we want to run the country?
This is why you took the $1.5 billion facility from the Chinese
to do what with it?
That was to augment the infrastructure, to address the increasing number of students.
I get the question asking, where's the money?
Exactly. We've been asking that.
Oh, where's the money?
Yeah.
Let's Get fund has completed 3,077 SHS projects. And these 3,077 SHS projects, about 2,000 plus were uncompleted projects that they have completed.
I mean, were NDC government uncompleted projects?
Uncompleted projects.
That
some of them also actually date back.
But that is no news. So we are going to inherit similar from you.
And, you also
and we are going to complete.
And then they have added onto it. Beyond that, as I indicated, there are other projects that are also going on. So as far as the Sika is concerned, it has been well used.
Okay, Doc, you also say that you want to extend this to private schools.
That's correct. We have made that promise. In addition to working on, improving the feeding and other supplies.
You heard Kofi say that is not a prudent policy.
I don't know why he would say so. Because, you see, we have had engagements with the owners of private schools. And they have told us that for the same fee that the state spends on our wards in the public school system, they are willing to take the same fee.
And charge nothing.
They are going to take exactly the same fee. And it makes sense because we are crying about double track. And I believe that double track is a product of lack of infrastructure and lack of adequate financial resources. And so Kofi made that point, and I agree with him. So if the private secondary schools are willing to take some of these students at the same rate, why shouldn't we oblige? So I think that is actually something that is doable, because the spaces that they have is going waste. I mean, some of the structures are lying fallow. It has even caused people to lose their livelihoods. And so if we can offload some of the students to occupy this space at the same fee, why should that be a problem?
Right now, as far as the free SHS budget is concerned, it's costing us an average of 2.5 billion a year.
Yes.
If you extend to private schools, you're going to spend more.
But these are Ghanaians.
No, I'm coming. Let me ask myself something question. 2025 to 2028, we all know a lot of the restructured debt will come into play. You have to pay. Your fiscal room it doesn't exist. It's not even restricted. It doesn't exist. Where's the NDC going to find additional funds to sustain this when you've extended to the private sector?
Well, I think education is a priority. And regardless of whatever challenges we may face as a nation, I believe the Ghanaian people would accept allocating sufficient resources to a very important sector like education. And we have said there are all kinds of expenditures now that we find unworthy and undesirable. Mm-hmm. I mean, why should we be allocating about 4 billion, 3 billion to the office of the president? For what? When we can cut that by even half or, more than half of it and reapply those resources. We've also spoken about GET Fund. If GET Fund is decapped and decollateralized, GET Fund will have sufficient inflows. Mm-hmm. And that would then allow us to be able to take care of the infrastructural aspects of it as well. And don't forget that we have also talked in our manifesto about providing dedicated funding for the implementation of the free senior school policy by ring-fencing a percentage of our oil revenue. So we have actually thought about how we are going to sustain.
That is what the MPP is doing.
We are going to sustain and improve the policy. And so I don't think that, allowing the private school to participate is going to be injurious. I think it's an advantage. I mean, their facilities are lying fallow. They are not being used. So why don't we use them if they are prepared to take the same fee? So if government is spending 1,800 per student per year, and they are willing to take the same 1,800 per student per year, Evans, what is wrong with that? I think it's a win-win situation.
Provided you find the funding.
We will, and I've told you how we are going to find the funding.
Ring-fencing part of our oil revenue.
That is it.
You're going to decap the
Get fund. That is correct.
And you're going to make savings from cutbacks you make to, say, the Office of Government Machinery.
That is correct.
And so
we are not going to be giving away outrageous contracts to procure ambulance parts for $34 million or sinking a pit in the name of meeting our personal obligations to our Creator. So we believe we can mobilize the resources.
Prof, that is a sound policy proposal, isn't it? Private schools are sitting there, they're willing to take how much you spend per child, free SHS. They're going to partly solve your infrastructure problem and your double track problem.
I believe you have a copy of the manifesto. If you look at page 144.
This is your manifesto?
Yes, education and health. The MPP believes that investing in education and health of the citizens is a non-negotiable responsibility of the state. Period. I can't go beyond that.
The point there is, in response to this intervention?
Yeah, so they want to go to private. But I'm telling you that this is what MPP believes in.
We are going to include them.
Yes, but it's a primary responsibility of the government. That's what you read?
Yeah, I said the MPP believes that investing in education and health of the citizens is a non-negotiable responsibility of the state.
Of the state, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop you from using the same principle to provide funding for private schools who also participate in free SHS.
It says it should be something that the state should do.
Yes. So
we are not providing funding. We are paying them.
They are paying them, yes.
So providing educational services.
You are extending the free SHS to private.
That is it.
Okay.
You don't oppose that?
Well, that's your.
But if it agrees with what you read.
That's your interpretation.
No, but that's what I'm trying to find out. Why are you reading it? What's the purpose of reading that line?
No, but you want to find out why we're not doing what they are doing, is it?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm telling you that we believe that that responsibility should be borne by the state. Period.
But in this case, the state will still be bearing it.
Well, I don't know their proposal, so I don't know what is in there. Yeah, bringing in the private and all that. I don't.
During your time, the private school association, they held a press conference asking government.
A number of times.
Yes,
in
plenty.
Fact, when we're doing this, manifesto, we met a lot of stakeholders. We met the private people. We did all that, So, but the government of MPP believes that probably at a certain point in time, but for now, it is the responsibility of the government of the state to ensure that health and education are provided by the state.
But at a tertiary level, we are going to leverage on the private sector.
No,
to augment infrastructure.
Even at the basic level, when it comes to infrastructure, this issue about funding that you're talking about, what Dr. Baumia has said consistently, is that when it comes to infrastructure, he is going to involve the private sector to provide the, infrastructure. And then they will find different ways, leasing it out and things like that, so that it will free government from having to fund all these other activities. And then government then will be in the position to have resources to do other things.
But invariable, that means that you are inviting the private sector to participate in education service delivery. How is that different from what we are trying to do?
Not necessarily. We are talking about the issue about, private sector in SHS.
Yes.
Yes. But we're talking about infrastructure, and not only in education, but in all other sectors. He's talked about roads and...
but because we have an education conversation, yes. How is the private sector going to be involved?
So the private sector, if there is any involvement, that is what I've told you. They're going to be involved in helping to provide the infrastructure that is required.
Okay, I understand that policy has already been implemented at the tertiary level. At the secondary level, how are you going to integrate the private sector in the provision of infrastructure? Or you don't intend to deploy them there?
At the basic, at the secondary, and then at the tertiary.
Tertiary we understand because that policy has been there for a long time.
Yes.
If you go to University of Cambridge,
But at
the secondary, how you doing it?
For example, let me give you an example. You know, when we came in, there was this issue about exam fees.
Yes.
It became a big issue. The children are not writing exams because they don't pay exam fee or whatever, and all those kind of things. Now, what we did was that we engaged private people to lease, printers, photocopiers and printers for us. And we gave that to all the districts. And they used that specifically to print the examination questions for the schools. You know, we didn't have the money then or we didn't want to spend that money, but we leased it out. We worked out some arrangements with them, and then they did. So there are various arrangements that I believe that the finance people will know how to go into these things with them. You know, so those things are
Let's go to basic education. I noticed that the NDCs, as we analyze, NDC, you focus a lot more on basic and tertiary. First of all, what are your big policies in basic, and why is that so important for you?
Well, basic is important because it's foundational. I mean, from early childhood all the way to junior high school. And the reason why we are focusing on basic is because for the last almost 8 years, if you listen to stakeholders in the educational sector, there is a consensus that basic education has been largely neglected. And this is the case in many instances. So you have challenges to do with irregular disbursements of capitation grants. You have the issue to do with lack of sufficient and sometimes lack of teachers in underserved and rural communities. You heard Kofi Asare speak to the issue of children dropping out.
Huge numbers.
Because where they are, they only have access to primary 1 to primary 6. The junior high school sometimes is located about some 10, 15 kilometers away. And what that means is that we have to bring access to junior high schools closer to where they are. We also have many instances where you have basic school, primary 1 to 6, without kindergartens. So the reason why we are heavy on basic is because it's foundational, and we must make sure that no Ghanaian child is left behind. So children in my communities of Yipala and Nyambisa, where they only have lower primary 1 to 3. After that, their education is largely truncated because they cannot continue. To avoid this would mean that we must focus on ensuring that every basic school has an early childhood facility, a primary facility, and a junior high school facility.
So you say in your headline policy, you want to initiate a policy to integrate early childhood education into basic education.
That is correct.
But supported by appropriate infrastructure.
Appropriate.
Because it's all hinged on if you can provide infrastructure.
That is the case.
Okay, so the fundamental question there is how are you going to create that infrastructure?
Well, I just told you.
Uncapping Get Fund?
Get Fund is purposely for education finance.
You're placing almost everything on your uncapping of Get Fund.
I gave you other examples of where we are going to mobilize the revenue.
For this one,
and for secondary, we spoke about
free SHS ring fencing the oil revenues. For basic too, you're doing the same.
Yes, and of course, government can also contract facilities to invest in education.
So
and you heard the former director.
Explain that. It's a contract facilities. What do you mean?
We have external partners who usually support educational development.
So you're not going to use donor funds to do this?
Of course, it's already happening. And we can do all of these things.
No, I know you say you can, but you have to be very specific because people want to make a decision.
I'm not the finance guy.
No, but
what I know is the broad policies.
Yeah, you sat in the room and put this together.
I know the broad policies, and I have to state them.
Yeah.
And we know they are doable.
No,
it's about priorities.
On this show, what we try to do is not just to state it, because we know them already.
It's about priorities.
It's to help us understand how you're going to implement.
It's about priorities.
And what are the outcomes?
It's about priorities.
I get it. So how, because when we said it in the analysis,
Look,
that you're so very heavy to an infrastructure.
Yes.
Infrastructure costs money.
And I'm telling you, look at the Get Fund allocations with this current policy.
Tell us.
Where, for example, in 2019, the levy accrued 1.8 billion, but the budgetary allocation was 1.2 billion. In 2020, it accrued 2 billion, but the allocation was only 1.2 billion. In 2021, it accrued 2.3 billion, but the allocation was 1.4 billion. 2022, it accrued 3.4 billion, and the allocation revised is 1.8 billion. 2023, it accrued 4.6 billion.
So are you saying that
and the allocation is only 1.8 billion?
100%
exactly.
will be allocated for
we can do these things.
But if you look at the differences between what was accrued and what was allocated, the differences aren't great.
Evans,
the overall majority
between 4.6 billion and 1.8 billion
81%.
Is a lot.
81%, for example, in 2022.
That is because
81% was allocated.
Government is not even meeting its own standards because it's supposed to be 25%. But look at how much is being taken off.
May I respectfully put it to you that even if you uncap, fixing infrastructure at the basic level, considering what you're going to do, at the secondary level and tertiary level, again, you say you're going to provide free tertiary education for,
we've said that.
First years. Uncapping Get Fund alone won't be enough to fund all that. You admit that.
But Get Fund is not the only source of revenue.
Ring fencing the oil revenues, which is what NPP is doing already.
Well, I have not seen any document to that effect. Have you?
But it's always been the case.
No, but have you? I mean, Parliament haven't seen anything like that.
But the oil revenues, after every 4 years, you have to identify in the PRMA what your priorities are. And the government priorities in that list of 4 the education has always been there.
So has government told you how much of our oil revenue goes to finance the free synergy?
I'm pretty sure if I delve into the budget, I probably will see.
I've not seen it.
But my point to you is that
until they become transparent about it, we can all take guesses.
But they haven't hit that point. But I want to point out, even if you hive that, you ring fence plus this, considering all that you want to do infrastructure, it's still not be enough.
Obviously, it's not going to be a one-time event.
Yes.
It's going to be a process.
Okay.
It's going to be a process.
Do you accept that between 2025 and 2028, the fiscal space will be non-existent? This economy will be far tougher for whoever wins this year's elections.
Well, that is going to be the case, but it doesn't mean that the most important services that Ghanaians need, and I would say education, healthcare, and agriculture, should suffer.
Okay.
These are the 3 important sectors that, regardless of what the situation is, we ought to mobilize the resources and sacrifice. And I think Ghanaians will be understanding.
Question, what will you be sacrificing? Because of opportunity cost. Whilst you're doing this, you have to something.
We will cut the allocations to the office of the president.
That's one.
Massively.
Okay.
We will plug revenue loopholes.
Okay.
We will desist and refuse to give away lovey-dovey sole source contracts to friends and family.
Prof, you say something similar for basic. Ensure compulsory early years and primary education for all. When you do this, you would instantly, enrollment will explode because it's compulsory. Now there is the compulsion of law and the threat of sanction. That would come to the same point of infrastructure, although you didn't add it directly.
Okay.
Right? So, same questions applies.
Before I come to that, it is never true that the basic level of education has suffered over the last 8 years. It is never
evidence
true. Evidence number 1. If you look at the manifesto, we've indicated.
I can give you a list of the issues.
Produce your evidence. Produce this evidence. We'll check. I had just 5 minutes, but I want to get into this.
If you look at the manifesto, look at page 44, 144, sorry, early years and primary education. When in 2017, people who were able at class 2, able to read at their level, were 18%. As we speak now, it is 38%. It is not enough.
From 18 to 38%.
It is not enough, but it is much, much better.
So you met 18?
Yes.
And you moved to 38?
Yes. It's not enough, but it's much, much better. So that is one. Two.
Doc, I will come to your evidence. He's putting his out, and my guys are checking.
Two, the issue about payments and whatever. This is a letter that I wrote in November 2017.
Payment to capitation?
Capitation, those, I mean, the list is here that were outstanding, that we needed to clear all these and then even raise the capitation.
Are you saying that since that time you've never been in arrears with capitation?
We are not talking about being in arrears in capitation, but the fact that over the last 8 years, things have been that bad is never true. You know, things have been much, much, much better. Much, much, much better.
Okay. So you put out two facts. Yes. He's shown this document. Doc, want to back what you said with evidence? He's challenged you with his.
I'm going to give him the list of the issues.
Okay, whilst you do that, I wanted to answer.
Oh, no, I have it.
Okay. Substantive question, though. I'll come to you, Doc, to wrap up with that comment. On the point of the basic, your main priority, the compulsory bit.
Yeah, the compulsory bit.
Once you do that, you're increasing enrollment. How you plugging
for every year cohort, if you take our growth rate and everything, we expect about 600 children to be at school at every grade level. You know, now I think we are doing something around 500,000. You know, so we know that at least we have some children who are still at home. There are a lot of programs that have been put out to get children to go to school and things like that. But we need to continuously improve on these things. And then there are issues also, as he rightly said, there are some communities that obviously they don't even have the school facilities. Children may have to walk some distances. Children are not ready to walk. I mean, they are not old enough to even be walking. So all these things have been factored in to make sure that infrastructure is provided. So as I'm saying, we have in mind that at least 600 children, 600,000
children
should be in school at every grade level.
Okay, so you're going to make provision for 600,000 children?
Yes, so at every grade level, you're expecting that much should be in school. Beyond putting in programs to get them, you also have to put in programs like those days they have something they say you have to go to the homes and things like that, you know.
So you're going to be enforcing.
As part of the capitation that we give, part of it is for enrollment drive that we encourage teachers and heads in the various communities to ensure that as many children as possible are able to go to school.
Okay, just quickly to respond and we can wrap up.
So this is why we see basic schools have been largely neglected. You have done a program, your media house, of the dilapidated structures. I mean, currently, according to Africa Education Watch, we have over 5,000 schools under trees. The furniture deficit is over 2.3 million furniture deficit. Irregular payment of capitation grants, we know, cumulatively as we speak, is the equivalent of eight terms. Poor nutrition, school feeding, is the food is atrocious. You wouldn't even feed some of that food to your pet cat. Inadequate teachers. Most of the rural communities, I have communities where there is no teacher. One of my communities, Lovosa in Kanjara, not even one teacher is in that school. Erratic supply of even supplies to teachers, including lesson notebooks, to the extent that teachers have to buy some of these supplies from their own packets. And in fact, sanitary facilities are a challenge in many basic schools. You can get this. Many basic schools are unable or are struggling to pay for water and electricity.
Evans,
these are some of the issues.
These are not problems that have all of a sudden come up within
and they should improve.
The schools, the school that you don't have teachers in. The school that you don't have teachers in your community. How many teachers were there when you were in power?
But it should improve.
How many teachers were there?
It should improve.
How many teachers were there?
You're admitting that the teachers weren't there in your time?
They were there. They were there.
So, and then this 5,000, whatever that we...
And that is why the community...
So within 8 years, 5,000,
Schools under trees.
Okay.
Within 8 years.
And all of you
Get the teachers to stay while we are introducing the teacher Dabra policy. Build the accommodation.
The beauty of this is that both of them are very qualified in the area. They've helped you make up your mind. Enjoy the rest of the evening.